The screen fades in from black, and we are immediately transported to a somber, rain-soaked cemetery. The air is thick with melancholy, the kind that seems to seep into your bones, even if you're just watching from behind a screen. A tall, distinguished man stands under a sleek black umbrella, his posture rigid, but his eyes betraying an ocean of sorrow. This is Arthur Langston, a name synonymous with power, wealth, and unrelenting ambition. At 70 years old, he has built an empire that spans continents, yet here he is, alone, vulnerable, and haunted by ghosts of his past. Arthur's gaze is fixed on a marble headstone engraved with two names, Thomas Langston and Benjamin Langston, his son and grandson. The tragedy that claimed their lives 5 years ago still feels like an open wound, one that refuses to heal. He comes here every year on this day, the anniversary of the accident, but today something feels different. As the camera slowly pans across the misty landscape, a faint rustling sound catches Arthur's attention. His sharp eyes dart toward the source of the noise, and there, sitting cross-legged beside the grave, is a boy. The boy looks no older than 12, his dark hair dampened by the drizzle, his clothes slightly too big for his slender frame. There's an air of quiet mystery about him, as though he carries secrets far beyond his years. For a moment, neither of them moves. The only sounds are the soft patter of raindrops hitting leaves and the distant hum of traffic beyond the cemetery gates. Arthur clears his throat, breaking the silence. "Who are you?" he asks, his voice low and gravelly, tinged with both curiosity and suspicion. The boy doesn't flinch. Instead, he tilts his head slightly, studying Arthur with an intensity that makes the older man uneasy. "My name is Ethan," the boy replies simply, his tone calm but firm. He doesn't elaborate further, leaving Arthur to piece together the puzzle himself. Why is this child here? What connection could he possibly have to Thomas and Benjamin? These questions swirl in Arthur's mind, but before he can press further, Ethan speaks again. "I knew Benjamin," he says softly, almost reverently. "He was special." Arthur freezes. The word special hangs in the air like a challenge, forcing him to confront memories he'd rather keep buried. Benjamin had been just 6 years old when the accident happened, a bright, curious child full of laughter and dreams. But Arthur hadn't known much about those dreams. In fact, he barely knew Benjamin at all. His demanding career had consumed every waking moment, leaving little room for family. Now, standing face to face with this enigmatic boy, Arthur feels a pang of guilt, sharper than any he's experienced before. Ethan continues, unperturbed by Arthur's silence. "Benjamin used to visit me sometimes. We were friends." His words land like a punch to the gut. Friends? Arthur struggles to process this revelation. How could his grandson have had a friend outside the family without him knowing? And why would Benjamin visit someone like Ethan, who clearly doesn't come from privilege? These thoughts race through Arthur's mind, but outwardly he remains composed, or at least tries to. "What do you mean, visit?" he asks finally, his voice tight with restrained emotion. Ethan shrugs as if the answer should be obvious. "I live nearby at St. Mary's Orphanage. Benjamin found out about it once when he got lost during a school trip. After that, he started coming around whenever he could. He said he liked talking to me because I didn't treat him differently, just because his last name was Langston." The simplicity of Ethan's explanation strikes Arthur like a thunderclap. It's not just what Ethan is saying, it's how casually he says it, as though it's perfectly normal for a billionaire's grandson to sneak away to spend time with an orphan. For the first time in years, Arthur feels truly unsettled, not because of the logistics of Benjamin's secret visits, but because of what they imply. Had Benjamin felt more comfortable confiding in a stranger than in his own family? Was Arthur so absent, so disconnected, that his grandson sought companionship elsewhere? These questions gnaw at him, but he pushes them aside for now. Instead, he focuses on Ethan. "Why are you here today?" he asks, his tone softer now, almost gentle. Ethan hesitates for a moment, then reaches into the pocket of his oversized jacket. He pulls out a small, weathered notebook and holds it out to Arthur. "This belonged to Benjamin," he explains. "He gave it to me before everything happened. I thought you should have it." Arthur takes the notebook with trembling hands, his heart pounding in his chest. The cover is worn, its edges frayed from use, and for a brief second, he wonders if he's ready to face whatever lies inside. But deep down, he knows he has no choice. This notebook might hold answers to questions he didn't even realize he had. Answers about Benjamin, and perhaps about himself. As Arthur flips open the first page, the camera lingers on his face, capturing the flicker of emotions that dance across his features. Surprise, confusion, pain, hope. Each expression tells a story of its own, inviting the audience to lean closer, to invest themselves in this unfolding mystery before he can delve. Deeper, however, Ethan rises to his feet and brushes off his pants. "I should go," he says quietly. "They'll wonder where I am." Arthur nods, still clutching the notebook tightly. "Will I see you again?" he asks, surprising even himself with the question. Ethan pauses, glancing back over his shoulder. "Maybe," he replies cryptically, then turns and walks away, disappearing into the foggy expanse of the cemetery. The scene ends with Arthur standing alone once more, the weight of the notebook in his hands mirroring the weight of the revelations it promises to bring. As the camera slowly zooms out, the narrator's voice cuts in gently. "Have you ever wondered how much you truly know about the people closest to you? Stay tuned, because this story is just beginning. If you're enjoying it so far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales like this one." The rain has stopped by the time Arthur returns home, but the storm inside him rages on. The notebook Ethan handed him sits untouched on the polished mahogany table in his study, its presence both tantalizing and terrifying. For hours, Arthur paces the room, his mind a whirlwind of questions. Who is this boy? How did Benjamin know him? And why does it feel like every answer only leads to more mysteries? Finally, unable to resist any longer, Arthur sinks into his leather chair and opens the notebook. The first page bears Benjamin's name, scrawled in childish handwriting, accompanied by a doodle of what appears to be a schoolhouse, surrounded by smiling stick figures. Beneath it, a single sentence catches Arthur's eye. "One day, I want to build a school where everyone feels welcome." Arthur stares at the words, his chest tightening. A school? This was Benjamin's dream? His grandson had aspirations beyond the gilded cage of the Langston Empire, yet Arthur had been too blind, or perhaps too selfish, to notice. Flipping through the pages, he finds sketches of classrooms, lists of potential subjects, and even a rudimentary budget plan written in crayon. It's clear that Benjamin had given this idea serious thought, pouring his heart into something meaningful, something pure. But how had Ethan fit into all of this? Arthur flips further, searching for clues, until he stumbles upon a section titled Ethan's Ideas. Intrigued, he begins reading. Benjamin had documented conversations with Ethan about education, leadership, and fairness. One entry stands out. Ethan says kids need someone who believes in them, not just teachers, but friends too. He knows because no one believed in him until now. These words hit Arthur like a freight train. They reveal not only Benjamin's admiration for Ethan, but also hint at the hardships the boy must have endured. Determined to learn more, Arthur decides to visit St. Mary's Orphanage the following morning, a decision that will change everything. He thought he knew about family, legacy, and redemption. The next day dawns gray and overcast, mirroring Arthur's mood as he drives toward the orphanage. Located on the outskirts of town, St. Mary's is a modest brick building surrounded by sprawling fields dotted with wildflowers. Despite its humble appearance, there's a warmth to the place that contrasts sharply with the cold efficiency of Arthur's corporate world. As he steps out of his car, he notices children playing in the yard, laughing, shouting, and chasing each other without a care in the world. It's a scene so foreign to him that it almost feels surreal. Inside, Sisterly Margaret, the head of the orphanage, greets him warmly despite his imposing demeanor. She listens patiently as Arthur explains his reason for visiting, then nods knowingly. "Ah, yes, Ethan," she says with a gentle smile. "He's quite remarkable, isn't he?" Arthur raises an eyebrow, intrigued. Remarkable isn't a word he would typically associate with an orphaned child. But as Sister Margaret recounts Ethan's story, Arthur begins to understand why Benjamin had been drawn to him. Born to a troubled mother who struggled with addiction, Ethan entered the foster care system at the age of 3. After bouncing between homes for several years, he eventually landed at St. Mary's when no permanent placement could be found. Despite the instability of his early life, Ethan possessed an innate resilience that set him apart from the other children. He was quiet and introspective, often retreating into books or spending hours sketching in a worn-out notebook, a habit Arthur recognizes instantly from Benjamin's own tendencies. Sister Margaret shares anecdotes about Ethan's kindness and intelligence, describing how he often helped younger children with their homework or comforted those who felt lonely. He has a way of seeing people, she says softly, not just their struggles, but their potential. It's rare in someone so young. As Arthur listens, he can't help but draw parallels between Ethan and Benjamin. Both boys shared a sense of empathy and purpose that seemed almost otherworldly, qualities Arthur realizes he himself lacks. Guilt gnaws at him once again, reminding him of all the moments he missed with his grandson, because he was too focused on board meetings and profit margins. Before leaving, Arthur asks if he can speak with Ethan privately. Sister Margaret agrees, leading him to a small garden tucked away behind the orphanage. There, sitting on a wooden bench beneath a canopy of trees, is Ethan. He looks up as Arthur approaches, his expression unreadable. "I read your notes," Arthur begins, holding up Benjamin's notebook. "You were very important to him." Ethan shrugs, though his eyes betray a flicker of pride. "Benjamin liked talking to me because I didn't judge him. Everyone else treated him like some kind of prince, but I just saw him as Ben." Arthur nods slowly, absorbing the weight of Ethan's words. "Did he ever tell you about his father? My son, Thomas?" Ethan hesitates before answering. "Sometimes. He said Thomas wanted to leave the company and start helping people instead. That's why they argued a lot." This revelation shocks Arthur. Thomas had wanted to leave the company? Why hadn't he said anything? Had Arthur's relentless pursuit of success driven his own son to despair? These questions haunt him as Ethan continues speaking. "He showed me pictures of the school he wanted to build, said it would be for kids like me, kids who don't have much, but deserve a chance anyway." Arthur feels a lump rise in his throat. The irony isn't lost on him. All these years he had poured billions into expanding his empire, yet his own flesh and blood had dreamed of using that wealth to uplift others. The contrast is staggering, forcing Arthur to confront the emptiness of his achievements. As their conversation winds down, Arthur makes a promise to Ethan, one that surprises even himself. "I'll make sure Benjamin's dream comes true," he says firmly. "That school will be built, and it will honor his memory." Ethan studies him carefully, as if trying to gauge the sincerity of his words. Finally, he nods. "Good," he says simply. "Ben would have liked that." Before parting ways, Arthur asks Ethan one final question. "Why do you think Benjamin trusted you so much?" Ethan smiles faintly, his gaze distant. "Because I understood him, and because he knew I wouldn't let him down." With those words lingering in the air, Arthur leaves St. Mary's feeling heavier, yet somehow lighter. Heavier because the burden of his failures weighs more heavily than ever. Lighter because, for the first time in years, he sees a path forward, a way to redeem himself and honor the legacies of those he lost. As the camera fades to black, the narrator's voice returns, soft but compelling. Sometimes the hardest truths come from the unlikeliest places. If you're moved by Arthur's journey so far, consider subscribing to our channel. Together we'll uncover the rest of this unforgettable story. The drive back from St. Mary's orphanage is a blur for Arthur. His mind races with fragments of conversations, Ethan's quiet wisdom, Benjamin's dreams, scrawled in crayon, and Sister Margaret's poignant stories about resilience and hope. But one thought dominates above all others: Thomas, his son, the man who had once been his pride and joy, only to become a source of tension and regret. As Arthur pulls into the underground parking garage of Langston Global Headquarters, a sleek glass skyscraper that towers over the city, he feels the familiar weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. For decades, this building has been his sanctuary, the place where he built an empire from scratch. Yet today, it feels more like a prison, its polished surfaces reflecting not success, but emptiness. The elevator ride to the top floor gives Arthur time to reflect. Memories flood his mind, unbidden yet vivid. He sees Thomas as a boy, bright-eyed and eager, always asking questions about how things worked. "Dad, why do some people have so much while others have nothing?" young Thomas had asked one evening during dinner. Arthur had dismissed the question with a laugh, chalking it up to childish curiosity. Now he wonders if that moment planted the seed of disillusionment in his son. As the elevator doors open, Arthur steps into the executive suite, where walls, lined with awards and accolades, serve as constant reminders of his achievements. But today they feel hollow. He walks past the boardroom, pausing to glance inside. The long mahogany table gleams under the soft glow of recessed lighting, but instead of seeing his executives seated there, Arthur envisions Thomas sitting alone, staring out the window at the city below. Thomas had never wanted this life. From a young age, he'd shown a passion for art and creativity, spending hours sketching designs for buildings or writing stories about imaginary worlds. But Arthur, blinded by ambition, had pushed him toward business, insisting that leadership was a birthright. "You're a Langston," he'd said sternly. "This company will be yours someday." Over time, Thomas grew quieter, his spark dimming under the weight of expectation. By the time he graduated from university, he was a shadow of the vibrant child he'd once been. Still, Arthur convinced himself that Thomas would grow into the role, that the fire within him would reignite once he took the reins of the company. But fate and tragedy intervened before that could happen. Back in his office, Arthur sits behind his desk, staring at the framed photo of Thomas and Benjamin on the credenza. It's a candid shot taken during a rare family outing, a picnic in the park. Thomas is laughing, holding Benjamin aloft as the boy giggles uncontrollably. They look happy, carefree. A pang of longing shoots through Arthur's chest. He realizes now that those moments were few and far between, stolen fragments of joy amidst years of strain and silence. His thoughts drift to the notebook Ethan mentioned, the one filled with Benjamin's ideas for the school. Could it be possible that Thomas had shared those dreams? Had father and son bonded over a vision of giving back to the world rather than taking from it? Determined to find answers, Arthur calls his assistant, Claire, and asks her to retrieve any personal files or documents belonging to Thomas. Hours later, she returns with a dusty box labeled simply Personal Effects, T. Langston. Arthur hesitates before opening it, his hands trembling slightly. What secrets might lie within? Inside, he finds a mix of items, old photographs, letters, and notebooks similar to Benjamin's. One notebook in particular catches his eye. It's leather-bound, its cover worn from use. Flipping it open, Arthur discovers page after page of detailed plans for a philanthropic project. At the top of the first page is a title, written in bold letters, Langston Foundation for Education. Arthur's breath catches in his throat. The proposal outlines a comprehensive initiative to build schools in underserved communities, provide scholarships for disadvantaged youth, and partner with local organizations to create sustainable educational programs. There are budgets, timelines, and even sketches of potential facilities. It's clear that Thomas had poured his heart into this idea, meticulously planning every detail. But what shocks Arthur most is the date stamped at the bottom of the proposal, 2 weeks before the accident. 2 weeks. His son had been on the cautious verge of leaving the company to pursue this dream, and Arthur had no idea. How could he have missed something so monumental? The realization hits him like a punch to the gut, leaving him reeling. The next morning, Arthur calls an emergency meeting with the board of directors. When they gather in the conference room, their expressions range from confusion to concern. Arthur rarely convenes unscheduled meetings, and when he does, it usually means trouble. "I've made a decision," Arthur begins, his voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside him. "I'm reallocating a significant portion of our annual profits to fund a new initiative, the Langston Foundation for Education." A murmur ripples through the room. Some directors exchange skeptical glances, others sit stiffly, clearly displeased. One of them, Richard Hargrove, a longtime rival within the company, speaks up first. "Arthur, forgive me, but this seems impulsive. Our shareholders expect us to reinvest profits into growth opportunities, not charity projects." Arthur's jaw tightens, but he keeps his composure. "This isn't charity," he says firmly. "It's an investment in the future, in humanity, in something greater than ourselves. My son believed in this cause, and I intend to honor his memory by bringing it to life." The room falls silent. No one dares challenge him further, though. The tension is palpable. Arthur knows he's risking backlash, not just from the board, but from investors and analysts who measure success solely in dollars and cents. Yet for the first time in years, he doesn't care. Money has lost its luster. What matters now is legacy, not the kind etched in marble plaques or engraved on trophies, but the kind that changes lives. Later that evening, as Arthur prepares to leave the office, Claire approaches him with a sealed envelope. "This was among Thomas's personal effects," she explains. "I thought you should see it." Curious, Arthur takes the envelope and opens it. Inside is a letter addressed to him, written in Thomas's neat handwriting. The date at the top reads 3 days before the accident. Arthur sinks into his chair, his heart pounding as he begins to read. "Dear Dad, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, and I'm sorry for the distance between us. I love you, even if I haven't always known how to show it. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about what truly matters. Success isn't measured by how much we accumulate, but by how much we give. That's why I've decided to step away from the company and dedicate my life to helping others. I hope you can understand and maybe even join me someday. Please take care of Benjamin. He's the best part of both of us, and I know he'll do amazing things. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll protect him, and promise me you'll find a way to make the world better, even if it's just a little bit. With love, Thomas." Tears well up in Arthur's eyes as he finishes reading. The letter is a plea, a confession, and a challenge all rolled into one. It's also a lifeline, a chance to reconnect with the son he failed and the grandson he barely knew. That night, as Arthur lies awake in bed, he replays the events of the past few days in his mind. Ethan's unwavering belief in Benjamin, Thomas's unfulfilled dreams, the notebook filled with plans for a brighter future. Slowly, a plan begins to form. He won't just build one school, he'll build dozens. He'll create a foundation that honors not only Thomas and Benjamin, but also the countless children like Ethan who deserve a chance to thrive. As the camera pans across the city skyline, the narrator's voice returns, gentle yet powerful. Sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the most profound discoveries. If you're inspired by Arthur's transformation, please consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we'll witness the birth of a legacy that transcends wealth and power. In the weeks following his decision to honor Thomas and Benjamin's dreams, Arthur finds himself drawn back to St. Mary's Orphanage again and again. At first, he tells himself it's purely logistical. He needs Ethan's help understanding Benjamin's notebook and ensuring the school project stays true to its original vision. But deep down, he knows there's more to it than that. Ethan has become a mirror reflecting everything Arthur has lost and everything he still stands to gain. Their initial meetings are awkward, marked by long silences and cautious exchanges. Ethan, though wise beyond his years, is understandably wary of this towering figure who represents a world so different from his own. For his part, Arthur struggles to shed the stiffness that has defined him for decades. He's accustomed to commanding rooms, making decisions unilaterally, and expecting compliance without question. With Ethan, however, none of those tactics work. One afternoon, as they sit together in the orphanage's garden, Arthur attempts to break the ice by asking about Ethan's favorite subjects in school. "Math?" Ethan replies curtly, not looking up from the sketch he's working on. Arthur nods, unsure how to respond. Math was never his strong suit. Numbers had always been Claire's domain. Sensing the older man's discomfort, Ethan adds, almost teasingly, "It's like solving puzzles. You'd probably be good at it if you tried." The comment catches Arthur off guard, and for the first time, He laughs, a genuine, hearty laugh that surprises even himself. It's a small moment, but it marks the beginning of something new. Trust. Over time, these interactions grow less formal and more natural. Arthur learns that Ethan loves astronomy, often spending nights lying on the orphanage roof to stargaze. In turn, Ethan discovers that beneath Arthur's stern exterior lies a man burdened by regret and yearning for redemption. As their relationship deepens, Arthur begins sharing stories about Thomas and Benjamin, memories he's kept locked away for years. One evening, sitting by the fireplace in his penthouse apartment, he recounts the day Benjamin was born. "He came into the world screaming," Arthur says with a wistful smile. "We thought he might have colic, but it turned out he just didn't like being swaddled. Every time we wrapped him up, he'd kick and squirm until someone let him loose." Ethan listens intently, his eyes wide with fascination. "Sounds like Ben," he murmurs. "He hated feeling trapped too." Arthur nods, struck by the observation. "Yes, that's exactly right. He was always exploring, always curious. I should have paid more attention to that side of him." Ethan tilts his head, studying Arthur carefully. "You can't change the past," he says softly, "but you can make sure it doesn't happen again." The simplicity of Ethan's words cuts through Arthur's guilt like a knife, offering both clarity and hope. For the first time, he allows himself to imagine a future where he isn't defined by his mistakes, a future where he can be the grandfather Benjamin deserved and the mentor Ethan needs. As plans for the school progress, Arthur involves Ethan every step of the way. Together they visit potential sites, meet with architects, and brainstorm ideas for programs that will empower students. Ethan proves to be an invaluable asset, his insights shaped by years of navigating a system that often overlooks children like him. When Arthur suggests installing state-of-the-art technology in every classroom, Ethan counters with a practical perspective. Not everyone knows how to use fancy gadgets. Maybe we should focus on teaching skills people can actually apply. Arthur is taken aback, not because Ethan is wrong, but because no one has ever dared challenge him so directly. Yet, instead of feeling defensive, he feels invigorated. For the first time in years, he's collaborating rather than dictating, listening rather than lecturing. The experience forces him to confront uncomfortable truths about his leadership style and the ways it alienated those closest to him. One particularly poignant moment occurs during a meeting with the construction team. As Arthur debates the merits of using sustainable materials, Ethan interjects, "What's the point of building something beautiful if it ruins the planet for the next generation?" The room falls silent, and Arthur feels a surge of pride. This boy, this remarkable, resilient boy, isn't just helping him build a school, he's helping him rebuild himself. Despite the progress they're making, shadows of the past linger. Arthur often catches glimpses of Thomas in Ethan's mannerisms, the way he furrows his brow when deep in thought, or the quiet determination in his voice when advocating for others. These moments are bittersweet, filling Arthur with both joy and sorrow. Joy because he sees his son's legacy living on through Ethan. Sorrow because he knows he failed Thomas in life. One rainy afternoon, as they review blueprints for the school, Ethan broaches the subject directly. "Why didn't you and Thomas get along?" he asks, his tone gentle but probing. Arthur hesitates, caught off guard by the question. After a long pause, he sighs deeply. "I wanted him to follow in my footsteps, to take over the company. But he wanted something else, something bigger than me, bigger than the business. I couldn't see that then. I was too blind, too stubborn." Ethan nods thoughtfully. "Do you think he would have forgiven you?" The question hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Arthur stares out the window at the rain-soaked cityscape, his reflection ghostly against the glass. Finally he speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but I hope so." By the time the school's foundation is laid, Arthur and Ethan have formed a bond that transcends their differences. To the outside world, they appear an unlikely pair, a billionaire CEO and an orphaned boy. But to each other, they are kindred, spirits united by loss, love, and the desire to create something meaningful. During a private ceremony marking the start of construction, Arthur makes a spontaneous decision that shocks everyone present. including himself. Holding Ethan's hand, he announces, "This school isn't just a tribute to my grandson Benjamin and my son Thomas. It's also a promise to Ethan, who has taught me what it means to truly lead with heart. From this day forward, Ethan will be part of our family." Tears well up in Ethan's eyes as the crowd erupts into applause. For the first time in his life, he feels like he belongs, not just to a place, but to people who see and value him for who he is. As the scene fades to black, the narrator's voice returns, warm and inviting. Sometimes, the most unexpected connections lead to the greatest transformations. If you've been moved by Arthur and Ethan's journey, please consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we'll witness how their story continues to unfold and how one act of courage can change everything. The construction of the school progresses steadily, each brick laid serving as a testament to Arthur's commitment to redemption. Yet beneath the surface of progress lies an undercurrent of tension, questions left unanswered, truths yet to be uncovered. For Arthur, the weight of these unresolved mysteries grows heavier with each passing day. He knows that building the school is only part of the journey. To truly honor Thomas and Benjamin, he must confront the ghosts of his past head-on. One evening, as Arthur sifts through a box of old photographs in his study, he stumbles upon an envelope tucked inside a leather-bound journal belonging to Thomas. The handwriting on the front is unmistakably his son's, but the date scrawled at the top sends a chill down Arthur's spine. It's dated just days before the accident. With trembling hands, he opens it and begins to read. "Dad, I don't know if you'll ever find this letter, but I need to say what's been weighing on my heart. There's something about Ethan I haven't told you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wasn't sure how to explain it myself. Ethan isn't just another child at St. Mary's. He's mine. His mother and I met years ago, long before I married Sarah. We were young, reckless, and when she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I convinced myself I wasn't ready to be a father, so I walked away. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. She had already given him up for adoption. I found out about Ethan last year, after Benjamin started visiting him at the orphanage. Seeing them together made me realize how much I'd missed, not just with Ethan, but with all of you. I wanted to tell you, Dad, but I couldn't face the disappointment in your eyes. Please forgive me, and please take care of Ethan. He's my son and your grandson." Arthur drops the letter, his vision blurring with tears. The room spins around him as the full weight of the revelation sinks in. Ethan isn't just a boy who knew Benjamin. He's Thomas's child, his own flesh and blood. The realization hits him like a tidal wave, washing away decades of regret and guilt in its wake. How could he have missed this? How could he not have seen the resemblance, the same sharp jawline, the same piercing gaze? The next morning, Arthur drives to St. Mary's orphanage, his mind racing with questions. When he arrives, Ethan is sitting in the garden, sketching in his notebook as usual. For a moment, Arthur simply watches him, marveling at the boy who has unknowingly carried the Langston name all along. "Ethan," Arthur says finally, his voice thick with emotion, "there's something I need to tell you." Ethan looks up, sensing the gravity in Arthur's tone. "What is it?" Arthur takes a deep breath, steadying himself. "I found a letter from your father, from Thomas. He wrote about you, about how much he loved you, even though he couldn't be there for you." Ethan's pencil freezes mid-stroke, his expression unreadable. "My father?" he whispers, his voice barely audible. "Yes," Arthur replies, kneeling beside him. "Thomas was your father, and that makes you my grandson." For a long moment, Ethan doesn't speak. His eyes dart between Arthur and the ground, processing the enormity of the revelation. Then, slowly, he nods. "I always wondered why Ben felt like family," he says softly. "Now I know." Arthur reaches out, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You're not alone anymore, Ethan. You're part of this family now. And I promise, I'll do everything in my power to make up for lost time." Tears well up in Ethan's eyes, but they're not tears of sadness. They're tears of relief, of belonging. For the first time in his life, he feels whole. With Ethan officially adopted into the Langston family, Arthur turns his attention back to the school project. However, tensions with the board of directors reach a boiling point when he announces his intention to step down as CEO of Langston Global. The news sends shockwaves through the company, with many executives questioning his sanity. "You can't just abandon the company," Richard Hargrove exclaims during a heated meeting. "This foundation is a distraction, a whim that will cost us billions." Arthur meets his gaze unflinchingly. "It's not a whim," he says firmly. "It's a legacy. My son believed in this cause, and so does my grandson. If that means stepping aside to see it through, then so be it." The room falls silent, the weight of Arthur's words hanging heavy in the air. Though some remain skeptical, others begin to see the wisdom in his decision. After all, the Langston name has always been synonymous with innovation and ambition, but perhaps it's time for it to mean something more. On the day of the school's grand opening, Arthur stands alongside Ethan, watching as children stream into the newly built facility. Their laughter fills the air, a symphony of hope and possibility. Above the entrance, a plaque bears the names of those who inspired the project, "In loving memory of Thomas Langston and Benjamin Langston, whose dreams live on in every child who walks through these doors." As Arthur delivers a heartfelt speech, his voice cracks with emotion. "This school isn't just a tribute to my son and grandson," he says, glancing at Ethan. "It's a promise to them, to you, and to the generations to come. Together, we can create a world where everyone has a chance to succeed, no matter where they start." The crowd erupts into applause, but Arthur's focus remains on Ethan. In that moment, he knows he's done the right thing, not just for his family, but for himself. As the camera pans across the bustling courtyard, capturing the joy on the children's faces, the narrator's voice returns, soft yet powerful. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards. If you've been inspired by Arthur's journey, please consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we'll continue to explore stories of courage, connection, and transformation. The years pass quickly, each one marked by milestones that reflect the profound changes in Arthur and Ethan's lives. The school, once a dream scribbled in crayon by Benjamin and meticulously planned by Thomas, has grown into a beacon of hope for countless children. Its success has inspired the creation of similar institutions across the globe, forming what is now known as the Langston Foundation for Education. Yet beyond the accolades and achievements lies something far more meaningful: a family reunited, a legacy redeemed, and hearts healed. On a crisp autumn morning, 5 years after the school's inauguration, Arthur stands at the podium during an international education summit held in the very building he once thought would define his life, Langston Global Headquarters. The irony isn't lost on him. Once a symbol of corporate ambition, the skyscraper now houses the foundation's main offices, its glass walls reflecting not wealth but purpose. As he addresses the crowd, a diverse assembly of educators, philanthropists, and community leaders, Arthur reflects on how far he's come. Gone is the rigid, unyielding man who once valued profit above all else. In his place stands someone softer, wiser, and infinitely more human. Today he begins, his voice steady, yet filled with emotion. We celebrate not just the success of our schools, but the lives they've transformed. Each child who walks through those doors carries within them the potential to change the world, and it's our responsibility to give them the tools to do so. The audience erupts into applause, but Arthur's focus remains on the young man seated in the front row. Ethan, now 17, sits tall and composed, his presence commanding respect without effort. He's no longer the quiet, introspective boy Arthur met at the cemetery. He's become a leader in his own right, a shining example of resilience and compassion. When the ceremony concludes, Arthur joins Ethan backstage, where reporters clamor for interviews and attendees line up to congratulate them. Amid the chaos, Ethan pulls Arthur aside. "You did good, Grandpa," he says with a grin, using the nickname he'd adopted shortly after their bond deepened. Arthur chuckles, ruffling Ethan's hair, a gesture that still feels foreign, yet undeniably natural. "We did good," he corrects gently. "This was never just my journey, it was ours." Later that evening, as the city lights twinkle like stars against the night sky, Arthur and Ethan make their way to the cemetery where their story began. It's a tradition they've maintained over the years, visiting Thomas and Benjamin's grave on significant anniversaries. Tonight, however, feels different. Tonight marks the culmination of everything they've worked toward. As they approach the marble headstone, Arthur notices something new, a small plaque mounted beside it, bearing Ethan's name. Beneath it reads a simple inscription, "Beloved, son and brother." Tears well up in Arthur's eyes as he realizes Ethan must have arranged it himself. "I wanted them to know," Ethan explained softly, placing a bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the grave. "That even though we didn't have much time together, they're still part of me, part of us." Arthur nods, overcome with emotion. For so long he'd carried the weight of loss alone, believing it was his burden to bear. Now, standing here with Ethan, he understands that grief isn't meant to isolate. It's meant to connect, to remind us of the ties that bind us, even when those we love are gone. Before leaving, Arthur kneels beside the grave, tracing the engraved names with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he whispers, his voice barely audible, "for giving me another chance, for showing me what it means to truly live." Ethan places a hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. Together, they linger for a moment longer, allowing the memories to wash over them, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. As they walk back to the car, the camera lingers on the cemetery, capturing the serene beauty of the scene. The narrator's voice returns, soft yet resonant. Sometimes the greatest legacies aren't built from stone or steel, but from love, courage, and the willingness to change. If Arthur and Ethan's story has touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we'll continue to share stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the power of connection. The final shot pans across the bustling courtyard of the school, now alive with laughter, learning, and possibility. Children of all ages run and play, their faces glowing with joy. Above them, the plaque dedicated to Thomas and Benjamin gleams in the sunlight, a testament to the dreams that sparked a movement. In the distance, Arthur and Ethan stand side by side, watching the scene unfold. Though their journey has been fraught with pain and challenges, it has also been one of unparalleled growth and transformation. They've learned that true success isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by the lives we touch and the love we leave behind. As the screen fades to black, the words appear, dedicated to those who dare to dream and to those who help make those dreams a reality. And with that, the story comes to a close.